All right, we're live. We're going to wait about 2 to 3 minutes or so. And then also, I want to highlight Fiveable's social media. Be sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram and subscribe to their YouTube channel. They release some really great content, and they even give you some reminders as to when upcoming streams are in case you happen to forget. All right, so in today's stream, our agenda is pretty straightforward. First, we're going to review rhetorical analysis. So we're going to look at what the heck multiple choice is. So then we'll go into like an exam multiple choice overview and then end with practice questions. And I'm going to emphasize this throughout the stream, but especially now, 3 minutes after the stream started, I really, really need audience participation for this live stream. I think that's like the greatest perk about Fiveable over any other service like an AP Lang, like review book from like one of the big companies. I think the best way that you will learn is by participating, and that means answering the questions. It means sort of like, contributing to the environment. And even though we have like less than 5 people today, I think that is more of a reason to honestly like contribute more to the conversation, because that's only going to lead to a more productive question and answer session at the end. All right, so let's talk about rhetorical analysis. So as y'all may or may not know, the AP Lang AP exam consists of a free response section and a multiple choice section. So on the free response, your second essay, or FRQ2, whatever your teacher calls it, you'll be writing a rhetorical analysis essay where you read some author's argument or some speech, you find some rhetorical devices, and you sort of analyze how those devices contribute to the author's purpose, and how and why they use the device in the first place. So it's basically breaking down that text to analyze how they wrote rather than what they wrote. So it's not like summary or anything. So on the multiple choice section, you will be applying a lot of the skills you use in rhetorical analysis on the multiple choice. So section 1 of the AP exam is you'll get an hour to do 45 questions, which is 45% of your exam score. It's very nice and consistent. Your questions will be presented in 5 sets. So there will be 5 passages on your AP exam. About 23 to 25 are what are called reading questions, which is basically what we're covering today. And then 20 to 22 are what are considered writing questions and what we're calling composition. So if you need help on those writing questions, you should definitely show up to next week's stream on the 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern, because we'll be going a lot more in depth on that. But today we'll be talking about reading. And note here that I wrote that vocabulary and context and identification were removed. I took the exam last year, and it was an older format with more questions and more sets. So actually, this year, there won't be questions about identifying rhetorical devices or understanding what vocabulary is. That's just a new change. So I think of the AP Lang multiple choice almost like the SAT, but just more abridged and a little bit more difficult, because just like the SAT is about 52 reading, 44 writing, you have about half and half reading and writing. That's all in one section. So yeah, today's stream is going to focus on the reading aspect. So College Board says that you will be tested on the following aspects in the rhetorical analysis multiple choice section, or the reading multiple choice. You'll be tested on the rhetorical situation, claims and evidence, reasoning and organization, and style. So those words I think we need to go over a little bit, because they're very broad and many people won't really understand what that means. So in terms of the rhetorical situation, that's how the writer writes, that's how the reader interprets. It talks about why the author wrote the passage, the urgency behind it. We'll get into that in just a second. There's also claims and evidence, so how the author structures their passage. That means whether or not they use different structures in terms of methods of development. I don't know if that's a word you're familiar with yet, but like having claims, subclaims, ethos, logos, pathos. That also goes in with reasoning and organization, how they organize their passage, how they kind of keep the entire article flowing, and also style. So how they wrote, the tone they were trying to sort of give off, things like that. And also, like I mentioned earlier, this is a very interactive, heavy stream. So I really need your participation, but that also means that I'd be happy to answer your questions anytime during today's like 55 minute long stream. So just leave them in the question box, leave them in the Ask a Question tab. I'd be happy to answer them. All right, so let's go over some key vocabulary terms. So you could probably do some quick Google search about What vocabulary do you need to know for the AP English language AP exam? But here are just a few of them that I think are pretty important. So the first 5 that I've highlighted here: exigence, rhetorical situation, tone, hypothetical, relevance. These 5 are really, really important for because these 5 showed up on the practice set of AP questions that College Board released. So exigence is the urgency. It's the reason why the author wrote, it's what motivated the author to write it in the first place. Why did the writer create that text? That is exigence. It's the urgency. It's, what caused them to do it. It's different from purpose. That's something that's really important, because purpose is what the author is trying to do with the text. Exigence is why they were motivated to write it, or what caused them to create that text. So the rhetorical situation includes 5 aspects. The first is exigence. The second is the purpose. The third is the author. The fourth is the writer. It's actually 6 parts. The fifth is context, and the 6th is message. So these 6 all flow in this one big mesh of a really good piece of writing. I'm actually going to paste it in the text here, because I think they are really, really important when you're talking about the rhetorical situation. Tone is the author's attitude towards a passage. So a tone you'll usually find is how the author is sort of using specific words or imagery, and you can kind of figure out a tone from that. Hypothetical is not like a literary device per se, but it's just a vocabulary word that's really necessary for you to understand 3 or 4 questions in the test. Hypothetical just means a scenario that's made up, that's not true, but it could be plausible or possible. Relevance is whether or not it's, I almost said whether or not it's relevant, but whether or not it matters, if it's important, if it, in the context of that writing, if it is, I guess, purposeful. Analogy is a comparison. So 1 is to 2, 3 is to 6. That's an analogy. An allusion is a reference to history, mythology, something like that. And then you have antithesis, which is when you use parallel construction to express opposite ideas. Something like hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. So the exact same subject noun structure, and then subject noun structure, but it's the opposite. Kind of goes hand in hand with justification, which is a little bit more broader. We also have oxymorons, which are 2 words that are completely opposite in meaning, but it's always just a set of 2 phrases, or a phrase of 2 words. So jumbo shrimp is the one that everyone uses, or I don't know, cold warmth. That's not really a real oxymoron people use. And then you have euphemisms, which are the substitutions of vague expressions for one that's thought to be too offensive or harsh. So to pass away is a euphemism for to die. Personification is when you take inanimate objects and make them do man-made things. So maybe the tree loves you, the tree flies away, or the tree walks away, or something like that. That's personification. Apostrophe is when you're referencing something that's not there. So maybe maybe it's an orphan talking to their parents in a dialogue. That's an apostrophe. Metaphor and similes are comparisons. This is something you probably remember from freshman English, maybe even middle school English. Comparisons using like or as for simile, and comparisons just in general for metaphor. And then methods of development are the way writers develop and organize their arguments reasoning. So some examples are cause effect, narration, definition, description. Those are just some examples off the top of my head. All right. If there are any questions, by the way, let me know. So here is our example passage. I don't know if you've already covered this in your AP Lang class. It's from 2007. In fact, I remember doing this exact passage around March or late February of last year. So hopefully I'm just ahead of your teacher. But I think this is a pretty good passage to demonstrate what you can do on the reading section of the multiple choice. So I note here that there are 2 strategies you can pursue. The first one is reading and annotating the passage. I think this is the strategy that most teachers encourage, because I think it allows for the most amount of time in answering the questions, going back and referencing. Anna, do you have a link to this PDF? Yeah, I do. So give me 1 second. I will send it to you right now. Give me 3 seconds. Anna, I will send it in yeah. Also, I like personally reading and annotating, I think it's the most effective way to really answer like this stuff, because I think honestly, some people like to like read the questions and then try and annotate based off of that. I think that's a little less effective. All right. Yep. Here we go. Thank you for asking. Good question. So yeah, because you only have 55 minutes or an hour technically, I would say that's like very, very short amount of time to like answer all those questions. So you really want to make sure you're spending as little time like rereading and as much time answering questions. All right. So this is the way that I annotated this really quickly. Like this was like a 3-minute annotation. So the first thing I always do is I love to circle, underline, and bracket. Those are like my 3 things. Remember on the multiple choice section of the AP test, you get a pencil because you're bubbling in answers. And then on the free response, it's all in pen. So, I mean, I use pen, pencil, whatever, but just get used to that when you're practicing for the test. And by the way, Anna, I will have extra resources at the end of this stream. I forgot to mention that in the agenda. But at the end of today's stream, I'll be giving y'all a bunch of links to like AP Lang multiple choice practice, because the old exam, so from 2019 and before, all of our questions, all 50 or so, were rhetorical analysis and reading heavy. So now they've like, in my opinion, they made the test a little easier. So there are so many resources for you to practice this part. And this is probably where you'll get the most amount of points off. So I always annotate key devices, literary techniques, ethos, logos, pathos, metaphor, simile, anaphora, analogy, things like that. I also underline any important information because that might just come up later on. I also look at unusual features and shifts. So something that I have learned this year actually in English literature, and something I wish I did last year, is that at the bottom of every passage, make sure you write like a tone word, or if there are like shifts in the passage, you'll write like 2 tone words. So that way you'll know later on, oh, this tone is this. And the way you kind of figure out tone is through diction, imagery, syntax, which is like the way I guess things are structured. I think there's less of it in Lang and more of it in literature, but like the way sentences are structured, short sentences, long sentences, you can sort of tell the author's attitude, how the author is feeling towards the text. Yeah, so write a tone word. I think it's really helpful. All right, so let's look at our first set of questions. So actually, I should probably give you some time to read it. So we'll say about 2.5 minutes or so, maybe 3 minutes for y'all to read through the passage, and then we'll start on answering some of these questions. So how it will work is we'll look at the passage, we'll look at the question, and then I'll kind of show the answer maybe after like 30 seconds of having y'all guess, or having y'all answer actually, because you're reading the passage too. All right, so for now, I'll give you about 3 minutes or so to read through this passage and then answer number 1. Try not to like copy other people's answers, because then you're not really getting anything out of it, because then you're just not really learning. But yeah, give y'all some time. All right, don't be afraid. This isn't like a grade or anything, but in the next 25 seconds or so, I want you to put in your answer for number 1. All right? I don't want to like stare at a blank screen, so I'd really appreciate it if you'll leave your answer in the chat. Thanks. All right, cool, got some answers. Appreciate it. Okay, so when I look at the guide, when this test was actually taken, only 40% of people got this right on the real AP exam. And yes, the answer is E. It is essentially negative. And the reason why is if you read through the entire passage, you'll just get these like hints of like Bentham has this limited vision. It's not like vicious. It's not like, ugh, he's not like sarcastic. He's not disillusioned or non-judgmental, but he's very, very essentially negative because he's very judgmental, obviously, and he's not appreciative. So that eliminates A, that eliminates B. We're kind of left with E as the best answer. So oftentimes on the AP exam, you will see that you will get the questions about the entire passage as a whole, and that's when you have to evaluate the beginning, middle, and all of the paragraphs and see if the answer choice matches, or that tone in this case. In this case, the author's attitude is the tone. You have to make sure that the tone that you pick matches every body paragraph. And so I actually grouped number 1 with number 17 because they're both passage as a whole questions. So I will give you about a minute to answer number 17. All right. All right, time's up. And yeah, the answer is C. It's a critical evaluation. So the reason why it's a critical evaluation is because what they're talking about throughout the passage is that he has limitations. So basically he's like, oh, he's limited. He thinks he has all this knowledge, but it's bounded. It's all empirical, but he hasn't had this like kind of experience. And Anna, you answer choice D, an ironic attack. So the reason why it's not, so I know it seems weird, like, oh, number 1 is negative, but it's not attack, it's an evaluation. The reason why it's not an attack is because he's not like attacking his like personality. And also it's not ironic in nature. Nothing he's saying is like contradictory or sarcastic or anything like that. So like, therefore, the best answer is C because he goes through each part of Bentham's, like, he does this, he does this. Bentham has he talks about self-consciousness. He was a boy to the last. That's like, it's not ironic in nature. It's more of a critical evaluation. I hope that makes sense. But I'm glad y'all put a lot of effort into this. Thank you for this audience participation. Makes my 50 minutes with y'all a lot more better, because a lot better, not a lot more better. But yeah, all right, we'll move on to the next question. And so we're about a third of the way through the presentation. We'll be doing about 40 seconds each on each question from now on. So let's do number 2. And yeah. And line 3 starts at was to a certain degree, because I see I cut off the line numbers here. All right, time is up. At least I think I counted to 40 right. And the correct answer is A. So it qualifies. So qualify means adding to, or like it sort of corroborates, it proves that. So the reason why it's answer choice A is because I think it's always helpful to read the sentence in context. So when answering the describes the function questions, always read like first sentence, second sentence, third sentence. So you sort of get a grasp on where it is in the passage. So let's read the first sentence. With imagination in the popular sense, command of imagery and metaphorical expression, Bentham was to a certain degree endowed. For want, this is the second sentence, for want indeed of poetical culture, the images with which his fancy supplied him were seldom beautiful, but they were quaint and humorous, or bold, forcible, and intense. Passages might be quoted from him both of playful irony and of declamatory eloquence, seldom surpassed in the writings of philosophers. So as you can see, it expands on the whole command of imagery, metaphorical expression part. I would say it is to some extent talking about the aspects of his language that he wasn't too great at. But the issue is that's not the primary function. The primary function of the sentence is to add on to the first sentence. It sort of serves as a transition into the rest of the first paragraph. That's why answer choice A is the best answer, because although B is true to a little extent, it's not the function of the second sentence. All right, we'll keep going. Number 3, and we'll give you another 40 seconds. Actually, I'm actually going to extend it to about a minute or so. So you'll have another 10-ish seconds or so. All right, good job, guys. The answer is E. The author's discussion of Bentham's ability to use imagery, in this case, is best described as one of qualified appreciation. So the reason why I think this question is actually really easy if you do process of elimination, it's not advice. It's not very contemptuous or dismissing. He's not really defending him. And it's not a condemnation because he's, appreciating some parts. So in this case, it's qualified appreciation because he does know a little bit of the limitations near the end of the line. And I think that shows that he's qualified. So yeah, answer choice E is good choice. Let's do number 6 now. I skipped a few of them because they had like repetitive, what is the function? And I wanted to give you all different questions. So now a minute starting now. I just realized I was muted. Sorry about that. But answer choice C is the best answer. Good job. The reason why is because answer choice A, establishing the author's credentials as a historian, is not really what those three sentences are doing, Anna. It's really talking about the constituents of the historian. So he's giving examples of in history what poets have done, such as Giza, Nizard, et cetera. It's more so providing examples than establishing credentials as a historian. So, yeah, hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to stop me and we'll go over it again. I just don't want to delay the stream too long and make it run like an hour and 10. All right, so let's try the next one. The author most likely includes this clause. Line 59 starts right here. He saw accordingly. And your 1 minute timer starts now. All right, now that I've seen most of the answers come in, it is answer choice A. So if you read the sentence before, or like the sentences before where it talks about Bentham's lack of emotional depth, his lack of experience at the bottom of the first paragraph and the top of, or the bottom of this like first huge chunk, it really, I think the sentence he saw accordingly in many little, but what the vulgarist eye can see, that does elaborate on Bentham's lack of emotional depth. So yes, it conveys that limitation. It's answer choice A. All right, let's try numbers 15 and 16. So I'll give you all a minute and I'll give you 2 minutes or so for this question. All right, so let's go through each question and then I'll answer each one for a little bit of suspense. So for number 15, the author characterizes Bentham primarily as an individual who, and in this case, the best answer is answer choice B. The author's primary characterization, I would say, is that they lack poetic insight. So poetic in this case sort of means emotional. So I think the reason why it's that is because they spend almost the entire half of the second passage, and even in the first paragraph, and sorry, in the second paragraph, I guess it kind of touches on his limitations. So I saw that some of y'all answered E, and the reason why it's not has a highly idiosyncratic style is because idiosyncratic sort of means like odd, like peculiar, I guess. And in this case, I would say that the authors can, like, the author their entire argument in the passage is that he lacks emotional depth and idiosyncrasy, like a style. The style isn't really focused on, if that makes any sense. So like the entire second paragraph talks about how he doesn't have experiences, how he doesn't have much emotion and stuff like that. And so that's really the characterization. For number 16, the answer is C. The area of experience which Bentham is said to be most ignorant is emotional. It goes hand in hand with number 15. So that also highlights how on the AP exam, one question being wrong and then you using that to answer the next question could really affect things. So yeah, the reason why is because he doesn't really challenge, he doesn't have like challenge in his personal life per se. So if you read this part about how he never knew prosperity and adversity, passion nor satiety, never had the experiences which sickness gives, that kind of stuff, that shows how he didn't really have that emotional experience. All right, so that is our first passage done. So do you have any questions about the first passage? Anything about the strategy that we've been pursuing? Because we have one more passage left and then we are done with this stream after like a Q&A. But I guess I could do a recap while I wait for questions. So as you can see, the types of questions that can show up are overall attitude, the function or the purpose of a sentence or paragraph, the description of imagery, naming figurative language, vocabulary, and characterization. As I mentioned earlier, there are often 3 worse answers or 4 worse answers if it's A, B, C, D, E, and there's one that's just better or the best answer. And sometimes you have to pick between the best 2. And also remember that I typically like to annotate and then read, but some people like to look at the questions first and then answer. It's up to you, personal preference. How you've been testing before is how the strategy, like the one that yields you the quickest and most effective results is the one you should keep doing. All right. Cool. So if there aren't any questions, we'll move into the second passage. This one is actually located in the course and exam description from College Board. So I'm going to link the PDF again, and I'm so sorry if you're on your phone. It's on page 115. But you can just, so how I did this one is for the questions that use those paragraphs, I like put that like chunk of text on there. You'll see. So once again, I'll give about 3 minutes for reading time, and then we'll continue with our stuff. So yeah, 3 minutes starting now. All right. Just making sure my mic's on. That's like the 3-minute time period up. So yeah, we'll move into some questions. Just so you know, we're about, let me do some quick math. About 60% of the way through today's stream. So let's start off with this question, number 7. In the context of the passage, all of the following phrases refer to the same idea. So I've cut out little sections of the prompt. So there's A, there's B, there's C and D, and then there's E within the 5 little chunks of text. So which one does not belong to the same idea? We'll give you 40 seconds. All right, thumbs up. The correct answer is actually D. So the reason why is A and B obviously have are both like talking about the revolutionary methods that women's rights needs, I guess. And actually C sort of is the same way. It's talking about how like if you read the sentence above, it says, now if you say that, it shows you do not understand the meaning of our revolution. It's a practical political means, the only means we consider open to voteless persons to bring about. So it's talking about those militant methods, those revolutionary methods. And moreover, answer choice E also does that too. It says here in lines 59 through, or sorry, right here in line 77 through 78, that they would either have to submit indefinitely to an unjust state of affairs, or they would have to rise up and adopt the antiquated means by which men in the past got them. So those means that the men used in the past, adopting those means, that's the revolution, because that's how men, the US got independent, yada yada yada. So in this case, answer choice D is the best answer, because it's not the same idea. When it mentions the proper and constitutional and practical way, that's not the revolution that they're talking about. So that's why D is the best answer choice. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just leave a comment, leave a question or whatever, and I'll answer in just a second. Right, now we're going to do this one. Which of the following best describes the writer's exigence? So if you were at the beginning of this stream, you would know what exigence means. If you weren't, it's okay, just guess, and then we'll explain it in 40 seconds. All right. All right, great answer. It's answer choice C, the limited resources available to women for changing existing power structures. Remember, exigence is what motivated the writer to create the text. So the reason why this writer was so angry was because of the limited resources available to women for changing existing power structures. Remember, exigence is different from purpose. Purpose has to deal with what the author is trying to achieve. What's their purpose in writing it? But exigence is why they were motivated to write it in the first place. All right, let's keep going. Okay. And you'll notice some of the vocabulary I covered at the beginning is going to be showing up here. Okay. Cool. So we got some answers, A, B, A. In the opening paragraph, the writer contrasts a hypothetical rhetorical situation with her own too. And in this case, we see she introduces this hypothetical, remember, means a situation that hasn't happened. So if I were, that's hypothetical. Or man, and I said to you, yada, yada, yada. And then she said, since I'm a woman, I need to explain it. So the answer is A. It illustrates the double standards for men and women in the political realm. So the reason why it's not answer choice B, explaining why women are more reluctant to adopt revolutionary methods, is because what the author is trying to do is they're trying to highlight, oh, men can do this and women can't. So it's like, because it's like right on top of each other and next to each other, that's why it's double standards. Whereas answer choice B talks about why women are more reluctant to adopt revolutionary methods. That's not really why she used the contrast, because it's not that she wants to explain why women are more reluctant. It's her highlighting, oh, I need to explain. And also answer choice B contradicts like her thesis where it says women have adopted revolutionary methods in order to win their rights of citizenship. That's not explaining why women are reluctant. It actually shows why women aren't reluctant, if that makes sense. So that's where like reading carefully on answer choices is also important. All right, let's do the next one, number 3. Once again, 40 seconds. Alrighty, I'll give like 5 more seconds. Okay, so for number 3 in the second paragraph, lines 11 through 30, which of the following best characterizes the writer's position on the relevance of her topic for American women? So the answer is E. Although American women are perceived as well off, they should nonetheless consider adopting the methods described by the writer. And yeah, that's what the author is really talking about here. You see, they say, I want to put a few political arguments before you, not arguments for suffrage. I didn't mean to do that, but arguments for the adoption of militant methods. So she sort of does argue here that like you should think about arguing it. So it's not really answer choices like D or C or B or A if you read through them, because that's like A and B aren't even relevant to the text. All right, let's do the next one. Number 4. And once again, 40 seconds. Okay, and yeah, the correct answer in this case is C. So in this passage, you see they talk about, in spite of the great deal, because American women are so well off, men quietly acquiesce, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, yeah, the tone is a bold, forthright tone. So in this case, that's where vocabulary comes in very handy, because if you don't know what reverent means, or impersonal or detached, things like that, or patronizing or ingratiating, things like that, you won't really know. And in this case, yeah, it's very bold when approaching her subject. She's not patronizing women. She's not like talking down to them. She's not detached or admiring or like, reverence, like praying to a god almost. It's none of that. All right, next question. 40 seconds. All right, you're right. It is answer choice A. They misconstrued the feminist reason for employing the strategies they've chosen to employ. Good job. All right, let's do this one now. Yeah, it's like a weird little, I had to like glue 2 screenshots together, but it works. 40 seconds. All right, the answer is B. The writer introduces a hypothetical scenario primarily to underscore the efficiency of voting as a means of addressing political discontents. So the reason why it's answer choice E and not answer choice E or the other answers is because it makes it very clear that the men who got ignored by the legislature just voted and turned out and changed the personnel, and that voting communities should get their grievances removed if they act in combination. So that's why it's answer choice E and not answer choice B and not answer choice E. Honestly, if I'd given more context, you would have known that this is in 1913. So women's suffrage did not pass until until 1919, 1920. Yeah, okay, just making sure. So therefore, E wouldn't make sense in the historical context because women couldn't vote in all 50 states. So it would have been answer choice B if you'd known that piece of information. Right? Number 8, 40 seconds. All right. The answer is D. Yep. They use either or to imply that disruptive action may be the only way of resisting oppression in certain situations. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I almost planned this. We are at the 59-minute mark, and today, in about, technically 50 minutes, we did about, I think 25 questions. And on the real AP exam on test day, you would be doing 45 questions in an hour, I believe. I might have gotten that mixed up. And so because of that, it's kind of like a simulation of what you'll actually be doing on the AP exam, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, 45 questions in an hour, and we did about 25 in an hour. So learning how to speed it up. So spending more than 40 seconds or spending less than 40 seconds per answer will be something good to do, right? So some useful resources. The old AP English language multiple choice used to be all rhetorical analysis or reading. So things you can find, like on older MC questions, will serve as great practice. I'll actually post the PDF links here and here. And make sure that when you do multiple choice in class that you take it seriously, because oftentimes your teachers will have resources that I don't. And these 2 links that I just posted are really good for multiple choice for the reading section. Okay. And yeah, that's it for me. Do you have any questions? I'll open up to Q&A for about a minute or so. And if we don't have any questions, then I'll wrap it up. Actually,